Hello and welcome to another episode of Soap Goes to the Movies. This is the sixth movie I'll be reviewing in my quest to watch all of the Oscar nominated films. Once again, out of approximately 590 as of this recording. So, this movie that I watched is the second to last of the movies from the 1928 to 1929 ceremony year. And this one is called the Hollywood Revue. It's also referred to as the Hollywood Revue of 1929. And this is review as in REVUE, which is like skits and musical numbers and satire. So this is also a pre-code, like the last movie I watched is a pre-code film. It's a musical comedy released by MGM. MGM's second feature-length musical and one of their earliest sound films. It was directed by Irving Thalberg, produced by Irving Thalberg, who also produced the Oscar winner that year, which was called The Broadway Melody. And it features nearly all of MGM stars in a 2-hour review that includes 3 segments in Technicolor. They had Masters of Ceremony, Jack Benny and Conrad Nagel. It was mostly Jack Benny. Conrad Nagel was in a little bit at the beginning and maybe a little in the middle, but for the most part, it was Jack Benny. Running time, 130 minutes. So I guess this was a road show originally, and the road show was 130 minutes long. They cut out a few numbers. So the Turner Library print is 118 minutes. Let's see, had a budget of $426,000, box office of 2.4 million. And it had a ton of, stars of the day. Like I said, all of MGM stars. There were a few missing. I think it said Greta Garbo, Lon Chaney. Although Lon Chaney, they were both mentioned. Lon Chaney, there was a whole song about him. Like, Lon Chaney's going to get you if you don't watch out. That's what it's called. So, but Conrad Nagel, Jack Benny, Joan Crawford had a number at the beginning. Marion Davies, Charles King. He was really good. Let's see. Buster Keaton had an amazing little sketch in it. Laurel and Hardy were in it. Lionel Barrymore, probably grandfather of Drew Barrymore, who's a director and actor. He had a small part in this, playing himself. This was, so I'll say, I really like this. It was, a lot of singing, dancing, musical numbers. It could have been shorter. There was a few, like there was one number where it was just an orchestra playing, kind of boring to watch in a movie. And a few that were just kind of dance numbers that were okay, but a little slower paced. But the comedy bits were very good. And a lot of the songs were very good. This is the debut of Singing in the Rain, performed by Cliff Edwards. And he was playing a character in this called Ukulele Ike. And also the entire cast performed the song at the end of the show. I really did like this, but it's not a movie. Okay. It's a review that was basically filmed, and that's fine. I like all the content of it. And almost feel like this is something that, could have been back then, could have been broken up into, not then because there was no TV, but, broken up into shorter segments as a TV show. So it just, it was kind of weird. It's not a narrative movie. So it's a little strange to me that it's nominated for best or for outstanding picture. But, if you go and look to see what was released in 1929, there were not a ton of movies at that time, which is why I think in the first couple of years of the Oscars, they combined years, 1927, 28, 28, 29. Yeah, it was, I don't know. This was really good. It was, Jack Benny was really funny, which is not a surprise if you know who he is. The Buster Keaton sketch, he played Cleopatra, came out in like a little Cleopatra outfit with like coconuts and a veil over his face, and he did a little dance, and then, supposedly she killed herself with a snake biting her breast, and so he pulls out a link of sausages and is dragging it around, and then at the end he uses that to kill himself with, and after he inflicts the bite, he starts doing these like flips all over the stage, like cartwheel kind of flips, and it was amazing. Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy were a little. They played magicians that were kind of bumbling. That was a little underwhelming. I do like Laurel and Hardy, but you kind of compare them to Abbott and Costello. I would always watched Abbott and Costello a little more when I was younger. They did a Romeo and Julio sketch where they did the balcony scene. This was one of the Technicolor scenes, and they had two actors, Norma Shearer, and I can't remember the man's name, John Gilbert. But they did the scene, in the original Shakespeare, and then the director was Lionel Barrymore, and they cut and they go to him, and he giving them notes, and they get a letter from the studio saying that the public doesn't want to hear that old language anymore, so they redo the whole scene in modern, quote unquote, modern language, modern for 1929. So that was kind of funny. But I did read something that said that doing that scene apparently was attributed to John Gilbert's sort of downfall in Hollywood. But this is a lot of like old time stars that probably made their living on the road, doing this type of review and stuff. And then when movies came along, they signed up with MGM here, and then they just kind of put everything together and filmed it. An all-star musical extravaganza. So it does it is a lot of fun. And so far, I'm trying to think of the other movies I've watched. So this one, Alibi, was pretty good. In Old Arizona, I did not like, as I reviewed last week. This one so far, this is the one I like the most. But again, I would not necessarily call it a movie in the traditional sense. So the next one, the last one, which was the Best Picture winner, is called Broadway Melody, which is, I think, also a musical, but I think it's in a different sort of vein than this. And actually, one of the lead in that was also in this Hollywood Review of 1929. That was, what was his name? Cliff Edwards, maybe, can't remember. But he was in both. He actually mentions the other movie, because the Broadway Melody, I think, came out. It also came out in 1929, but must have been a little earlier. So this was the first movie of this bunch of the six I've watched that I've had to pay for. Let's see, going back through Wings and Seventh Heaven, I was able to find on Tubi. The Racket I found on YouTube. Alibi was on YouTube, and In Old Arizona was on YouTube. This one I could only find on a DVD from Amazon, and I guess there's a collection called the Warner Brothers Archive Collection that they released probably a while ago now. But I found this for $10 on Amazon. So, a little pricey for a movie from 1929 that I'm definitely only going to watch once, but that's fine. The next one, I think, the Broadway Melody, I think I'm also probably going to have to rent, but I think it's like $3 on Amazon or Apple or one of those. So not nearly as expensive. There's going to be a bunch of these that I'm going to have to pay for, but that's fine. We'll see how it goes. So far, so good. We're going strong here. I had a little bit of a break recording these over the summer, and then now I'm trying to get back into it, hoping that I can get through a bunch in the winter time. But yeah, so I really liked Hollywood Review of 1929, and I'll see you next week with the Broadway Melody. Later.